Now, it's only the beginning of February in 2023, but I spent a lot of time last month in January writing reviews for and making videos for a lot of very premium sort of audiophile tier wireless earphone releases that came out. So I thought it was only right to kind of go over all of them in one big go in a single video. Now, I'm not going to be going into super deep detail with every single one of them. If you want to see more detail, you can watch the individual videos that I made for them. But I'm going to be going over the general features, the general sound qualities of each of these. So I'll be going over Final Audio's ZE8000, Noble Audio's FoKus Mystique, and then 2 units from Bowers & Wilkins, the PI5 S2 and the PI7 S2, the second generation of the PI series. So starting with price, we have the 5S2, which is $300. Then we have the ZE8000, which is $350. FoKus Mystique, $360. And the 7S2, which is $400. Now, types of drivers. The 5S2 has the same dynamic driver, a 9.2 millimeter dynamic driver as the S1. The ZE8000 has one dynamic F-Chord Do driver. Then we have the 7S2, which has the 9.2 millimeter dynamic driver that we see in the 5S2 as well as a balanced armature driver. And then finally, we have the FoKus Mystique, which actually has 3 drivers in it, and that is an 8.2 dynamic driver and 2 balanced armature drivers. Moving on to battery life now, and I'll go in order from, I guess, least impressive to most impressive. So ZE8000 has 5 hours of battery, 5 hours of playback time in the buds, and 15 hours in the case, and a 15-minute charge gets you 50 minutes of playback time. Then we have the PI-S2 series, and now in their second generation, they both have the same amount of battery life. They both have battery upgrades. The 5 and the 7 are both 5 hours of playback time in the buds now. The 5 has an additional 19 hours in the case, and the 7 has an additional 16 hours in the case. But the one battery stat that they have over all of the units here is that now in their second generation, they have quick charge capabilities. So that means a 15-minute charge gets you 2 hours of playback time, which I think is a pretty smart way to kind of offset that somewhat lackluster, 5-hour battery life in the buds. And then the FoKus Mystique, I think, is the most solid all-arounder when it comes to battery. It has 7 hours of playback in the buds, another 28 hours in the case, and a 15-minute charge gets you 70 minutes of playback time in the buds. And that is on the upper end of average in general for wireless buds, and I would say that for this audiophile tier that we're dealing with today, that is generally above average. So that's good to see with the Mystique. Okay. ANC. I don't have objective measurements for this, but I will go by what I think was pretty apparent to my ears. So FoKus Mystique is at the bottom of this list, and that's not to say it has bad ANC, but it is to say that it has no ANC. You don't have the option of active noise cancellation with the Mystique, so can't really judge it on that. The ZE8000 doesn't have the greatest ANC by any means. I would say it's a little bit below average. That being said, though, it might have the best passive isolation out of everything here. Bowers & Wilkins, I think, have perfectly, well-suited, fairly average ANC, but it's good, it gets the job done, and also have pretty good passive isolation due to their physical design. Not quite as intense as the ZE8000, but still good passive isolation. Now, as far as mics go and mic quality, call quality, transparency mode, all of that, there is kind of a general theme here with all of them, which is that's not really the features that I think these kind of wireless earphones are going for. I would say for all of them, that mic quality isn't bad. It's not great. It's not a standout quality one way or another, kind of like the ANC. I don't think people are going to be asking you to, repeat yourself because your mic is so bad that they can't understand what you're saying. It's not like that. You can definitely understand, people on the other end who are using these. So I would say pretty much across the board, with maybe some minor details of difference between each one, it is okay microphones on all of these. Good enough to do what you need them to do. I think the winners of wireless connection are the ZE8000 and the FoKus Mystique. I had a really easy time pairing with both of them. I think I had the least cutouts with the ZE8000. Didn't have very many cutouts with the FoKus Mystique, and didn't have a lot of cutouts with the PI7s, but had them, I guess, the most frequently out of all of the ones here. The S2s did have an antenna upgrade in their second generation, so they do in theory have better wireless connection than their first generation. Still isn't their strong suit, but it's doable. It's good enough. Most audiophile grade wireless Bluetooth products, they're more concerned with getting really good quality out of wireless audio than they are with the more like convenience features, such as having a really nice mic or having a really nice ANC or anything like that. They're a bit more focused on the audio aspect, and I just want to mention that as part of what I was saying about these. Now, I have some thoughts on the apps that each of these use. I think at the bottom of the list is Bowers & Wilkins. It is just a very straightforward app. They did update it so that now if you have, multiple music streaming subscriptions, like, you have Spotify and you have Tidal, you can centralize it into the app and you can control everything from the app. And then, of course, you can control ANC pass-through mode, check on bud battery life. And I think ultimately they fall in the bottom of the list because of the lack of an equalizer. They have a good enough house sound, but the other two not only have equalizers, they have a pretty decent equalizer and also a really excellent equalizer. So the ZE8000 uses the app from Final Audio, where you can do all the things you can do with the Bowers & Wilkins app aside from the centralization. So bud battery life, change modes, turn 8K audio on and off. I'll get to that in a minute. Has all those basic features, but it also has a 4-band EQ, which you can adjust the exact frequency of each of those bands. It gives you like 4 choices for each band, and you can add and subtract from there. I would like to see maybe 5 bands on it, but the fact that there are 4 bands, you have an option for what you want each of those bands to be. You can get a pretty customized sound out of it. And then the Noble app is probably my favorite app out of all of these. You can do all the basics like I mentioned for these other two, but it also has a 10-band equalizer where you can add or subtract, I believe, 12 dB of gain to 10 different bands. So you can make really drastic changes with it. You can make really subtle changes with it. I feel like you can really get in on an exact tuning that you want with the FoKus Mystique. I'm usually not a big EQ guy, but I was really, really into the equalizer with the Mystique. A few more wireless things that couldn't find an exact category to fit them into, but I'll just mention now. Starting with the 7 S2. It's able to play 24-bit audio using aptX Adaptive, and it also has wireless retransmission. So it comes with an unbalanced 3.5 millimeter to USB-C cable. You plug in the unbalanced end to an unbalanced output, and then you plug in the USB-C into the charging case, and the charging case becomes a wireless transmitter. And then in the case of the ZE8000, it has this brand new feature called 8K audio. Long story short, it is basically a really fine-tuned time calibration that just makes the audio sound a bit crisper and a little more well-defined when you're listening to it. A little hard to explain, but it is a noticeable difference when you have it on and off. So starting with Soundstage, I think the absolute best imaging and soundstage performances that we have here are the 7S2 as well as the ZE8000. I'm going to call it a tie between them. In short, the 7S2 has a really big stage. It's the biggest one here. It's bigger than the 8000. It is very wide. It is very deep. And it even has elements of height going for it. And it's an extremely, extremely impressive stage to see from a wireless unit. The ZE8000 is pretty deep. It's fairly wide, a little less height in it, but traces of height. But really, I think that what impresses me more than its size is the way that it just positions instruments. It's maybe more specifically its imaging than its soundstage that I think is really impressive. Has just that kind of like angular quality to it of instruments kind of like cutting across your field of hearing. Then the 5S2 also has an excellent stage, especially considering it's the cheapest option here. Has a fair amount of width, I guess, but it is a really deep stage. I would say it's just as deep as the 7S2 goes, and provides some really nice separation through its depth. I would describe it as kind of more like hallway shaped. And then the FoKus Mystique, I think, has the most kind of like typical AB two-dimensional soundstage out of all the units here. It's still like a well done linear soundstage. You feel pans like pretty vividly and smoothly move across your face, but it's all kept really close to the face. And again, it's more 2D than 3-dimensional. Now, in terms of balances, these are still wireless units, so it is no surprise that all of them can be classified as having warm balances. But the way that they handle that warmth is very different from one another, and they have it in very varying degrees. What I can also say for all of these sound signatures, however, is that they provide that warmth without giving you too little in the way of treble. It doesn't sound like you have pillows in your ear. All of them kick in with either their high mids or their highs, providing like a good amount of lift to otherwise kind of like warm and dense balances. That's something that really drew me to all of these units, the fact that they actually have a nice treble presence in them, as opposed to what you frequently hear with wireless audio, which is the muffled, more pillowy, kind of non-detailed sound. Now, not that they actually sound really similar to each other by any means, but the most similar balances that we have here are the 5S2 and the ZE8000. And both of them, I think, have the most broadly boosted low ends, but the 5S2 really takes that to another level. It has a really strong bass boost, and that includes sub bass, mid bass, high bass, low mids, takes basically the entire bottom third of the frequency graph and just raises it. This really broadly boosted low end, I noted in my review for it, it doesn't work with all genres of music. It can kind of take some of the detail away from the example that I used in my review was like more intensely strummed acoustic guitars, so like folk music. 5S2 isn't quite your earbud if that's your thing. But if you are more of the poppy electronic sort of listener and you listen to music that has a really driving low end to it, the 5S2 might be your best friend. It has that really dense low end, but it also has a pretty present treble extension, so there's this more lifting, airy quality in it as well, and that's, I think, what stops it from sounding like you have a pillow in your ears. So I think it has the most like driving low end here out of all of them. I would say the most aggressive low end. Then I would say that the least aggressive low end that we have here is the ZE8000. And I kind of mean that as a good thing. It still has a loud low end, but it doesn't punch, it doesn't rumble quite in the same way that the S2s do. I would say that the low end on the ZE8000 is somehow like a little more gentle. It imparts this really like warm, fuzzy quality, particularly on like grand pianos, for example, or acoustic guitars. Kind of has a very nice like intimate vocal quality, which is also a thing that the 5 has for the S2s. And similar to the 5, it has a good amount of emphasis in the low treble and the mid treble. It's not so much about its extension, but I think that the low and mid treble brings out these harmonic overtones that brings out really nice details from certain more high-pitched parts. For example, I mentioned in my review that it brings out the details in strings really well. So warm, but delicate, not so aggressive. The 5S2 is warm and very aggressive. Then moving on to the 7S2, It takes, I would say, the energy that the 5 has and moves it. It moves it from its high bass and low mids into its mid bass and its subs. So it is a very, very powerful sounding low end. It's kind of equal parts rumble and punch, and it has a very nice distinction between its low end and its mids. And that's what it has over the 5. It just has a better distinction between the low end and the mids. Maybe my favorite balance here is the FoKus Mystique. I think it really is trying to be specifically like an in-ear monitor, where the others are going for more of the wireless earphone sort of sound. It has a little bit of subs going on for it. I think like just the right tasteful amount, has a really punchy mid bass, and then has a little bit of emphasis in those low mids and the high bass, but I think it is really like just the right amount. Usually I'm really sensitive to that region, but I really liked the way that it sounded with the Mystique. I think it is maybe the most natural sounding mids balance here. It might be tied with the 7S2 for natural sounding vocals. And then its treble profile is, I'm trying to think of how to even say this. It is like a treble profile that you would hear on a non-wireless unit. It has fairly bold treble, but at no point would I call it really like a peaky treble at any given point. I don't think that there's any overemphasis in like the low or the mid treble. Like for example, I think that the 5S2, even though this wasn't the case for my ears, some people might call it, you know, a little harsh, maybe a little peaky at points. Maybe the same for the low and mid treble on the ZE8000. But I don't think that you're going to have many people saying that at all with the Mystique. I think it is maybe the most universal sound signature that we have here, where I just trust that you could put anything through the Mystique and it's going to sound good. Again, that could probably be said for the 7S2, but for some reason, the Mystique just found a way into my heart. So I really like the balance on the Mystique. And then on top of that, you can get like that exact balance that you're looking for with the equalizer. So that was the speed run on this like flurry of audiophile tier wireless earphones that came out this month. I'm going to include links to the Audio 46 online store for all of these down below. I'm also going to include the link for just the Audio 46 store in general. If you want to read my reviews on these, you can do that on MajorHiFi.com. Or if you want to watch video reviews for these, we have those on the MajorHiFi channel. So speaking of which, like and subscribe if you want to see more videos like this and more reviews. And, you know, if you're in the market for a high-grade Bluetooth earphone, now is a good time, I think, to start narrowing in on the one that you want, because some really good releases came out in January. So hope this video was helpful if that's you. And anyway, I'll see you next time.